to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another hour of insightful and invigorating conversation that is going to help us build our community, build our shared prosperity, and hopefully bring us together in a way that we are building a society that behooves every one of us. Why do we talk about Goldilocks and why do we call ourselves the Goldilocks community? Why should you join the weekly Goldilocks program? And what is it trying to tell us? To me, Goldilocks is about the inner child that was always there inside of us. Remember, either when you were a child or you have a nephew or a niece or a younger sibling or your own child, even before a child learns to talk, they know exactly how to influence different individuals and how to get what they want out of every one of those individuals. So as human beings, as creatures, we come into this world with this innate ability to find that middle ground of convincing others to want to do things for us, right? The things we would never have thought we would do when that child looks at us with that puppy dog eyes and makes that smile, right? How did we then lose that ability as we became adults? And what has that done to us? Social conditioning and everything that is told to us or what we believe, the way we should be, the way we should show up, we should have a mind of our own, doesn't mean that we forget how to influence others. And Goldilocks is reminding us the importance of showing up in a way that we're not too hot, not too cold. We're not too hard, not too soft. And when we come from that place of centeredness, our ability to influence the outcomes we want gets magnified. Why do I say that? Research shows that we can each only influence 3 levels, just 3 levels from where we are. So imagine I come from an extreme right end of a particular issue. I can only influence 3 levels towards the center because I'm already at the extreme right. If I come from the extreme left end of an issue, I still can only influence 3 levels towards the center because I'm already at the extreme left. Now turn around and look at what's going on in our world and what's making everybody so angry and frustrated and not clicking for any of us in order for the life to happen, right? And it's because we've all staked our positions and we've taken those positions as my way or the highway. But what if in our own self-interest, what if we look at all perspectives and say, you know what, while this particular issue sits with me at this extreme, there are so many others who are impacted by this and their reality sits in various other positions on that spectrum. And if I find that middle ground and come from that place of understanding and empathy, now all of a sudden, it is not about me and my outcome. It's about how am I going to make this transformation happen? And magically, in that sweet spot is where my results and my outcomes are going to come to. And that is the magic Goldilocks is reminding us. She's reminding us the importance of that centeredness so that I can show up in a way that it empowers me, empowers my mission, empowers my purpose. And in the process, I'm building my prosperity and organically building the shared prosperity of those around us. And to me, that is the magic that we need to bottle up and take a sip every morning when we wake up so that we start our day embracing that magic and embracing that beauty. Think for a moment, what is your purpose? Each of our purpose sits in the centeredness, again, the centeredness of what each of us love, what we are great at, and what the world needs. If it's something I love and I'm great at, but the world doesn't need, hey, Cass, that's a great thing you do, and we see you love what you do, but yeah, it's a nice to have. It's not a must have. So I can't drive my economic engine using it. So the meeting of those 3 elements in that sweet spot is my ability to thrive and be viable in a socioeconomic marketplace in a way that is meaningful, that is authentic, and that's real. And even the ability to live my purpose comes from that centeredness. 3 nuggets I want us to take into this conversation today before I bring in our amazing guest today. I cannot wait for you to meet him. First is the need to authentically, to embrace that authenticity is staying tuned into your being. Why is that important? When we connect with our being to purposefully channel our doing, we are not coming from a place of transaction. We're coming from a place of transformation. And we're transforming our space, ourselves, and evolving into who we are and what our purpose is. And therefore, everything we do remains authentic. How many times do we hear people say, this is not what I do, this is not who I am, but this is what I do? The minute that is decoupled, then if who you are is not represented in what you do, then how can I trust this process? And authenticity leads to trust, and therefore, having the courage to show up as your being is so mission critical. The second nugget I want us to take into the conversation is embrace your uniqueness to thrive. Stop the urge to fit into a box. Build agility and flexibility to become resiliently unique. And today's guest is going to show you through his lived experience and his conversation why it's important not to lose yourself to fit in. You were made by this universe, by your creator for a purpose. Embrace it, live it, and be resiliently unique, because that is what's going to give you your authentic purpose and drive your economic engine. And the third nugget I want us to take into the conversation is the importance of authentically leading self to influence others. We never lead others. We can only lead ourselves, and in that process, influence others and empower others to lead themselves. Let the gravitational pull of your authentic self lead you. I love this imagery of a waterfall. The water comes from the well springs, but the gravity pulls it and makes it a beautiful waterfall. I come from a part of the world where we have so many waterfalls. 100% of our electricity is hydroelectric. Imagine all the beautiful things happen when you allow nature to organically drive what it's intended to drive. To have a valuable conversation on being unapologetically authentic is Khalil Crawford. Khalil, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Dr. Henry. Thanks for having me here.
It is my pleasure. So, disclosure, Khalil and I met at Northpark University. He was in my class a few years ago. And there is nothing more rewarding for an educator, a professor, to see a student go on to do wonderful things, and ultimately to channel my inner Yoda. When the student becomes the master, that is the ultimate beauty. So it is truly my honor to have Khalil here today to have this conversation. Let me give you a brief intro, very brief, because there is more to him than these few words. And then he is going to talk about what he's doing and the impact he's creating. Khalil Crawford, MBA, is an author and technologist. His background in non-for-profit and the arts has equipped him for a unique journey in the business sector. A graduate of Northpark University and Hampton University, Khalil recently released his debut book of poetry and prose, Organ City. What I love about how Khalil talks about this book is that this Organ City envisions an organic metropolis governed by the laws of nature versus capitalism and hate. It illuminates creativity as a conduit through which the soul may travel. How beautiful is it for me to have the opportunity to bring you on and have you talk about why this book and what got you here.
Well, thank you kindly for the honorable introduction. And I've been extremely excited all week long, in preparation for being here to share this space with your audience and to, integrate our audience. The word integrate, it's been a very impactful word in my life. At one point, I was very much invested in the integral philosophy, which was pioneered by Sri Aurobindo, Haridas Chaudhuri, and many other scholars such as Alan Watts in California. And what the integral philosophy entails is integrating mind, body, soul, as well as East and West approaches to spirituality in order to create a uniquely whole existence and experience on this planet. For me, the essence of that is nature and the organic, hence the word organicity, which is the inspiration for the book Organ City. And the whole idea is that only nature can bring us back to our essence within urban environments. I'm very much a product of the Midwest, born and raised in Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana, and very much influenced by the subcultures of the Midwest, particularly the house music and techno music cultures, house primarily from Chicago, techno primarily from Detroit. And Detroit in particular envisions technology as a means to uplift humanity there, as well as the globe. It started off as a local music and it evolved into a worldwide phenomenon, particularly in Europe and Berlin, that really took it to the next level. Same can be said for house music. House music, definitely a homegrown art form in Chicago and was greatly absorbed by London in the late 80s. And then from London, it exploded worldwide. So the vision of the integrity of subculture combined with the vision of technology as a means of uplifting humanity and repairing our urban environments is the premise for the book. Now, the reason why the book was created, actually, it's from a business standpoint, it's a matter of supply and demand, right? During the pandemic, I found that a lot of people that were already familiar with many of my articles and contributions to other publications, they began to suggest very strongly that I put out a work of my own. Something I always thought about, but, to be honest, I didn't need that validation as a writer. I know I'm a writer. I know I'm a good writer. I've been doing it for years. So I didn't need to put a book out for validation. It was an act of service, right? An act of service with respect to being a servant leader, okay? Something that's very much propagated in academia and particularly North Park University, and a form of leadership that I have practiced as long as I have, been in business. It's very important to me that not only are people seeing me from behind as a leader, but from a indigenous and circular standpoint, I'm seeing them in a circle as leaders as well, a circle of leadership. For me, it's circular. It's not hierarchical, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot of, stuff packed in that little 36-page book, which was beautifully illustrated, by, Mariette Papich, who's a phenomenal, illustrator, philosopher, artist, you name it. She illustrated it. Chicago's own Amanda Acevedo, she designed the cover. And then the brilliant Janae Jordan provided a fine introduction, to the book. And we operated as a unit to bring this book out with the vision that I had, which was inspired by my aforementioned influences.
That is such an amazing journey. And what strikes me, having known you for the last few years, mm-hmm. is that you have stayed so authentically true to who you are, what you believe in, and you still continue to evolve and bring forward in a co-creative way
Right.
solutions and clarity to the world we live in. And
Yeah.
ironically, we met in an accounting class.
Correct. Yes. Which, and for me, it was really ironic because I've never been a numbers guy. I've always been a creative type of person, very literary, very visual, and numbers and hard science were never truly my strong suit academically. But you made accounting applicable to things I cared about, right? Social justice, world peace, all of my hippie idealism, you know what I'm saying? The way that you presented that information, and accounting as a, form of doing business, you actually presented to me as an art form for change, right? So that really, sparked me and let me know that, the investment in my business education was a lot more than I initially bargained for.
Absolutely. And I see that philosophy resonated and reflected in your works, right? Because you talk about how do we tap into our inner soul and use our creativity for that soul to live free and embrace what Mother Nature has given us, because that is the blueprint, right? If we want to know what leadership is, it was from Chicago, right? Watch a robin nest, lay eggs, and hatch them and give them the freedom to fly. To me, that is the epitome of what leadership is, right?
100%.
It's not hierarchical, right?
Right, exactly. And, there's this whole movement towards transformative leadership, in the business community. And, ideally and conceptually it's beautiful. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people that are more about promoting themselves as leaders and promoting their, leadership models. And, this really focused on transformative leadership. But I think we need to complement that and pair that and balance that with transformative servantship, right? So otherwise, to me, it's just looking like another mass marketing branding effort that is more about you as opposed to the people you proclaim you want to lead, right? So for me, the best leadership model that I've ever encountered in my life is a gentleman by the name of Chris Osgood, who's from Minnesota. He's a founding member of the Suicide Commandos, which was a seminal punk rock band, back in the late 70s. And they actually went gold in Sweden, even though they were from Minnesota, which actually has a large Swedish community, right? So he went on to become an arts administrator, and he founded an organization called Springboard for the Arts, which definitely served as a springboard for me, not only as an artist, but also as a leader. And what was phenomenal about him is here's the founder of Springboard for the Arts. And in order to advance the organization, he would step down, hire someone else, a younger person usually, and allow them to lead. And what he did is that he actually led from behind, and he did this for years, hiring new people, training them as they're in the leadership form, right? So for example, if he hired them as president, he steps down to vice president and hires them as president, right? And mentors them from behind. And from there, that just elevated him, that raised him, because other organizations saw that here's an innovative business model. Here's a person who's clearly humble, who's not just about himself, right? He's about mentoring the next generation by immersing them in a leadership, position. And I'm very much an advocate of immersive education myself. And I've had experienced various forms of it, both in and out of academia.
And ultimately, that is what we all are striving for, right? And the society and the world needs for those who have come before us to allow us to stand on their shoulders and be given the opportunity to be groomed. Grooming the next generation is ultimately the cause of every generation, the purpose of every generation. And sometimes schools forget that that is the sole purpose of education. Sometimes parents forget that that's the sole purpose of parenting, not just having the children live our dreams, but give them the tools to live their dreams. And the image I have in my creative mind is that the adults, the ones who have come before us, their role is to give the next generation roots, to have a sense of belonging and anchor and learn, at the same time, wings to fly and take off and be what they were intended to be by the nature that created them. And if we can give them roots and wings, we've done our part. And the rest is we just sit back and we just watch all the magic that unfolds. So as you look at the world around you and you do your work, how are you seeing the ability to transform the greed-based capitalism? Because capitalism was never intended to be greedy. It was supposed to have the polar opposite effect, right? It was supposed to unleash the wealth of a nation and get it out of the claws of a colonial master. It was never supposed to replace the colonial master.
Right.
Go ahead. In your works, where are you seeing the ability to make that shift and truly take capitalism to where it was intended to build a thriving society?
Yeah, definitely. I think it boils down to just, knowing who you are, being who you are, and doing what you do. I think the downfall of our capitalist ecosystem is that everybody feels like they have to be other than themselves in order to succeed in it, because they're looking outward as opposed to inward, for success, right? They don't understand that the architect of their existence pre-programmed them for success, right? So what I find myself doing is just holding a mirror up to people, whether it's people who work under me, people who walk with me, and yes, even people who are, ahead of me. I surround myself with mirrors so that they can see themselves. Now, how do I do that? I study. I study them. I study where they're from. I study who they are, and I study why they do what they do and why they are who they are, and that comes from listening, right? I like to listen. I can talk, but the truth is I prefer to listen, because when I listen, I learn more, and it gives me, data, to, create new programs of enlightenment, whether that's a book, whether that's a new way of doing things at work, whatever it may be, I take what I'm given and apply it specifically to the project that I'm working on, and a lot of that is easier said than done. Some of us are born with certain advantages. Some of us are not. Some of us are born with certain gifts or privileges. Some of us are not, but we definitely have a common thread amongst all of us. And I think for me, the key is to really, articulate and advance that common thread amongst all of us. We're all composed of a life form. We're all composed of the same, type of matter. So, just keeping commonality, at the forefront, for me, it allows me to have a greater impact than perhaps I otherwise would not if I didn't, lead in that manner.
So two things you just mentioned resonates with me. One is that we all, and I'm going to paraphrase this, we are all comprised of matter and energy, and that is universal, and that comes from nature. So therefore, we are all from the same roots, from the same source. And regardless of what the outer wrapping is, we are the same.
Yes,
right?
100%.
That is such a critical thing. I come from a culture where we greet each other like this, right? We say namaste or vanakkam, and it literally means my light sees the love, light, and purpose in you. And in that point of recognition, we are one, right? It's a COVID-friendly greeting, but it is also a very soulful, soul-filling way of greeting. It's not just a hi or a bye, right?
Absolutely.
So coming from that Eastern tradition and embracing the Western ability to do that, that is the beautiful thing. And the other thing that resonated with me is the importance of listening. You are into philosophy, so you will resonate with this. Paul Tillich talks about how the first act of love is to listen, not to talk, not to tell them you love them, just listen. And to me, listening is not just with our ears. We have to listen with our eyes, because 70% of the conversation is not verbal. We have to listen with our heart, because there is a lot of feeling and emotion and unspoken. So how do we bring our whole being into the act of listening and be focused in that moment without thinking about what's in it for me at this moment? That is critical for the next steps to flow. How do you advise people can master that? Because that is not easy.
Yeah. For me, that comes from being humble. If you're not humble, then it's going to be hard for you to listen, because you're immersed in ego. And for me, what people that immerse themselves in ego comes from a place of insecurity. So I think the key to that is to be secure in yourself. Again, easier said than done, but how do you do that, right? For me, that goes back to the mirrors, right? You have to look at yourself realistically. Just if you've been living a lie your whole life, at some point, the truth will present itself. So you just have to be, you have to be real with yourself. You have to be honest about your weaknesses as well as your strengths. For me, I know what my weaknesses are. I know what my strengths are. I know what my limitations are. I know all these things I know about myself, which is why I've had a lot of success, the past several years. But to be honest, it took me years to get there. I had to be humbled externally, which then brought me to a point of understanding the importance of humility, and then humbling myself internally, acquiring a taste for humility, being willing to not be the quote, chief, but understand the value of being a non-chief, right? And for me, it goes back to understanding your role, understanding that, to lead at the end of the day is to follow.
Absolutely. And a servant leader knows that different situations requires different individuals to lead. Therefore, we need to groom a circle of leaders so that the right person can charter the course at the right moment and then pass the baton on to the next person. And as you say, there is no ego in it. It has to be purpose driven. It has to be mission congruent. And that means there has to be shared value, shared purpose.
Right.
How do you see creating the environment for shared purpose and shared value? Because you sit in the sweet spot of that middle generation in the workplace today.
Right.
We're a 5-generational workplace. We still have baby boomers who haven't gotten out of the workforce.
Right.
And we have the Gen Zs coming in.
Right.
And then we have the upset, angry, disenchanted Gen X's in there, and the millennials. Hey, I have ideas. Let's get this done. But then they don't know how to execute. So all of this is going on. How do you create a right environment to bring out the best?
Well, I'm 100% Gen X, and I'm very much a product of societal anger. I'm very much a proponent of revolution. And I'm very much and have been a rebel, most of my conscious life. And, in my opinion, all of that was warranted. There was just, when we were coming up in the 80s and particularly the 90s, there was just a lot of injustice happening, and whatever the boomers were dishing, we weren't scooping it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the internet was arising, and that was our instrument, of change, with a lot of angry, aggressive music in the background. So we wanted to flip the script, you know what I mean? And I found myself in a very interesting place nowadays, and to be fair, I'm on the younger end of the Gen X, spectrum, but very, very much Gen X in my sensibilities. But it has allowed me to be a wonderful bridge, actually, between the millennials and the boomers. I feel like as I've matured, I definitely have sort of tamed my aggression against the boomer establishment, and have found ways to collaborate with them and find more points of commonality with them, which is, allowed me to be that bridge between them and the millennials. And to be honest, I love the Gen Zs. I feel like, the Gen Z, the newest generation. I love them, because they remind me a lot of our generation. I had a feeling that they would, reflect that a lot of our sensibilities quite a bit, just based off, the ebbs and flows of society and, and how it's developed, so yeah, it's very interesting. But at the same time, us Gen Xers, we're kind of in the background, watching this whole boomer versus millennial thing. And, most of the Gen X folks I know, online in business world, we just crack up, because we're kind of happy we're not sort of at the forefront of people's, social constructs, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's all it is. A lot of it's mindset, Like, I know plenty of boomers, that have more of a Gen X, maybe even a millennial mindset and vice versa. So a lot of it is just about your personal value system and what you deem to be, important, in our, in our planetary existence.
Totally. And it's also individuals' ability to take perspective and evolve as the time evolves. One of the things I have noticed coming as an immigrant from South Asia to the West through Europe into the United States, a lot of the boomers and the older generation, they are not the way they are because they want to be or they want to be mean or something. They don't know any better. That's the world they grew up in.
Right.
So giving them context and giving them perspective and holding space for them.
Yeah.
Allows for a better way. And to me, once again, that goes to the ability to embrace our inner Goldilocks, because we can't be upset about somebody's context because that's all they know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And that's why it's important to study, Mm-hmm. I study what's happening with the boomers, what's happening with my own generation, the newer generations coming up, and just drawing, back to what we were saying earlier, just drawing likenesses and drawing commonalities and operating within that vein as opposed to the, physiological, chronological differences. We're coming and going, but who are we in essence, and what are we leaving here, and how will it, impact, the future as well as interpretations of the past and the present.
Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's the thread that binds us. And that's what's going to us come together. So as you think of your work in Oregon City and mm-hmm. your desire to help people embrace nature, to find their purpose and build a more co-creative society, right? Not nobody, but a co-creative society. Mm-hmm. What are one or two elements you want people to start embracing so that they can start their own journey towards that destination?
Yeah, I would say the first thing they need to embrace is themselves. at the end of the day, deep down, we know who we are, whether we're admitting it or acting in it or not. We know who we are. There's a unconscious, a subconscious, and a conscious, right? So even if you're not in tune with yourself, be real about what you like to engage externally, right? I love technology. I love art. I love music. I love literature, and I hone in on those things, right? And those have been the avenues of success for me. I wasn't always successful, but I made strategic decisions along the way to make my skill set accessible on different platforms so that it could be leveraged towards success, right? So, you know, like you said it earlier on, it just boils down to leading yourself. And you can't lead yourself unless you have a relationship with yourself. So question is, how do you develop a relationship with yourself? I would say you have to die to yourself. There's a saying in Buddhism, like if you meet a Buddha along the way, like kill him or something to that effect, because that's just a representation of you. That is a reminder of who you are. Who we meet is going to reflect some aspect of us, good, bad, or ugly. So, it's just very important to die to yourself so that you can be reborn.
Mm-hmm. And that's powerful. Mm-hmm. And the most important relationship in our life, we all forget, is with ourselves.
Right.
It is the single most valuable relationship we will have for the rest of our lives, and it stays with us. And the relationship with ourselves is a relationship with our soul. So I subscribe to the philosophy that it doesn't end when the soul leaves this body, because the soul's relationship with itself continues into the world of energy and light beyond the world of matter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the sooner we come to terms with it, mm-hmm. the easier the struggle is, or the less vociferous the struggle is going to be.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to cling to your material self. Mm-hmm. Or materialism in general, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I appreciate all those things. I appreciate my physicality. I appreciate the material items, that I own and that I engage. But, I'm not blinded by that stuff. I know that it's going to come in and it's going to go, but the soul is eternal. And I have to continue to do that soul work, to ensure the purity of my journey, my existential journey. And Oregon City talks a lot about existentialism as well. It's very much a existential work of creative expression, and it's very much rooted in the value of existence, how to express it in an authentic way, and also in a way that can, inspire, impact, and mobilize others to transform themselves in a manner that will make them happier with what they see in the mirror each and every day.
And it is something that everybody has realized they need to get to, and COVID has been a stark reminder. So take a moment and remind people where they can get their hands on your book and how they can access it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to Oregon.city, www.oregon.city, http://Oregon.city, you will find it. Or you can, Google my name, Oregon City, you'll find it, but it's available on 2 platforms. That's blurb.com, BLURB.com. That is the online bookstore where it can be found. It's basically an Amazon for creatives. You won't find my book on Amazon, by the way. Okay. It'll be on blurb.com, or if you prefer a digital version, you can find it on Google Play or Google Books. So that's where you can find it. And I'll be happy to share the link, with the Facebook group, the LinkedIn group, and I'll put it in this chat too. But that's where, that's where you can find it.
Thank you. And if anybody wants to get in touch directly with Khalil, feel free to message me. I've tagged him on all the social media posts. And the goal here is to make sure everybody is accessing the information, the content, and taking their own journey to find themselves and build something lasting for themselves. So let me take a moment and open this up for the audience to engage with Khalil here. So Catherine, Elisa, any thoughts you want to share? Any questions?
Doc, I don't have any questions, but I'd like to share that I love that Khalil's in a space of merging, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know, at least in America, this is a unique time where we're all active and forced to interact with one another at the same time. There isn't a generational divide, and it's weird. It's incredibly weird. And it's like, how do you love and honor and respect people who traditionally, seemingly, whose times has passed, but the reality is the way debt and our society has been structured, that they are a part of it, even down to the level of being inside of McDonald's, and how intergenerational that is, and how from a workforce that can be a challenge. I know for me, growing up in family, it was fun. It was excellent. I love the community aspect. From a workforce perspective, I can see it as being challenging for a lot of people, trying to figure out how to navigate this thing called life. So I love that you're speaking on it. Any could you expand on any other thoughts for those of us who are uncomfortable? I'm not personally uncomfortable. I do more entrepreneurial things, but for the audience at large, how to manage that, how to perceive the other while trying to also expand their own career.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And I think it's one that we all wrestle with each and every day. We're all in different places in our personal development, in our career development. We all have goals, aims. A lot of us are filled with ambition. But I think for me, it boils down to trust. I need to trust myself. I need to trust the people that are around me, and trust that if they don't have my best interests in mind, I have the tools to advance my best interests. So that means I might have to deal with them differently, or I might have to work with or from another source, or I might have to transform my environment, change my environment in some way, shape, or form. I think it boils down to, are you where you need to be? Because I really believe, and it's just the laws of nature. If you're in the environment you're supposed to be in, you're going to thrive, and if you're having an unfavorable experience within that environment, you have the tools, to do away with that unfavorable experience, to change and transform that unfavorable experience and make it favorable. We're a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. The structures and the man, would have us think that we're a lot less than what we are, and that we're a lot less valuable than what we are. But that's just the furthest thing from the truth. If you're, working a job that doesn't pay that much, and it may not involve a lot of advanced skill, it doesn't mean you can't bring your A game, into that environment and make it better for yourself as well as the people around you. I think Kaza's story is a testament to that. There's other immigrants that come, here with nothing and built themselves up to the highest level, with no advantages coming in. So, truth is, we don't have any excuses. We just have to accept ourselves, and then we can find ourselves on the path of success. I once had to tell someone, they tried to tell me that, you know, I'm not where I'm supposed to be in my life at a given time. I had to let them know, look, it doesn't matter where I am on the path. The fact is I'm on the path and I will get, you know, to the destination that this path leads to. So, you know, slow your roll, you know what I mean? So you have to have that level of awareness. That's why a hierarchical, you know, understanding of things, you know, can be a detriment to a person, particularly if they're not on the, you know, on the higher end of that hierarchy. So the circular, you know, construct of nature, you know, is what is going to ultimately be our saving grace and the path to satisfaction for us all.
What a
Kat,
brilliant,
if I may I respond really quickly?
look at it. Thank you, Marquise, for the question. Go ahead.
I love that response. Couple key points that really popped out to me. You're a lot more powerful than you realize you are, right? Many of us just fail to realize that. We think we're limited by the things around us. And then you mentioned Dr. Kaz in the context of, hey, bring more to the table. There are no excuses. So I love that because it's very empowering. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for that insightful question and the very enlightening way in which, Khalil, you approach the answer. And ultimately, it's the faith in the fact that the universe created us and the universe is rigged in my favor. All I have to do is embrace it, show up authentically for it, and allow it to find its place, and not let anybody tell me what I shouldn't be. And Mother Nature shows this to us, right? If we have flowers that bloom only in one season, we don't have a garden. A garden requires us to have plants that fruit and flower at different seasons so that the entire year is captured. Well,
right.
I'm a spring blooming flower. Maybe I am a winter bloomer. Deal with it. I am very beautiful when all of you are gray and black and white and sad, right?
Right.
That's perfectly fine.
Right. A lot of us, we throw out our plants because we think they're dead, but they're not dead. It's just not their season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the best illustration is orchids. I tell my husband, don't buy me flowers, buy me an orchid plant, because they bloom a whole month. And when they go dormant, you put them in a cool, dark place and they start blooming again. So you can give it back to me when it starts blooming again, right? And so nature is reminding us of all these things. And that's what I love about your take on organic and nature and draw from it. As we bring this to a close, before I go there, anybody has any thoughts they want to add? Take a minute or two, ladies. I see folks putting messages.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll add one portion. I apologize. I'm multitasking this morning, but this has been so insightful and invigorating. I'm a professional as a financial advisor for a pretty major company. And what I've noticed in my 22-year career is that, you know, kind of identifying more with the Gen X world, you kind of come into the workforce being a little submissive. And what I'm noticing is that as I'm getting older, change is not going to happen unless you provide feedback. And I think what I appreciate when you talk about the generational differences is that I feel as though millennials and Gen Z are already dialed in to giving feedback early on. And it's primarily driven by social media because they're not inhibited by putting their thoughts out there. And what I think a little bit of the disconnect is the sometimes the Gen X level, the baby boomer level has not tapped into that world. They don't get it to some degree. So I'm just curious as to when we talk about these generational aspects, how we bridge those gaps. How do we take what we appreciate about each of these generational experiences and kind of work together to do what we need to do at the end of the day?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily believe in a lot of the hype around generationalism. You know, we're talking about people in the workforce. We're talking about capable people, and we're talking about souls. I really believe at the end of the day, it's just a marketing scheme, to target your product towards a particular demographic that you think is more likely to buy it. I'm very, very much influenced by the baby boomer counterculture. Like, that's probably 60% of my personal identification is the baby boomer counterculture, going back to like the late 19, really back to the 40s. In my book, I talk a lot about, bebop and the approach, using a bebop approach to advancing our lives, right? Miles Davis was known for pioneering straight ahead jazz, and the whole concept about straight ahead jazz is that it doesn't matter how good it sounded before, it doesn't matter how successful or how many records I sold in the past. It's about innovating forward, and creating forward, with respect to who you are and what you have inside of yourself. He had that much confidence in his creativity that he didn't just try to capitalize off his previous success. He could have stopped with, kind of blue and left it at that and ate off of that the rest of his life, but he kept pushing it, fusing forms, and collaborating with, Gen X hip hop artists, and probably we'd be right there with the grime. I mean, the grime cats in London, and, the newer forms. Right now, he'd be doing that if he was still here. So that's what I'm about. Straight ahead, no chaser. I don't care how many units I sold back in the day, what am I working with now, and where is it, taking me, and where ultimately will it take my audience? And another key to success, I think it's important also to know your audience. Oregon City was targeted towards a very specific, audience. Thankfully, Kaz is, sharing her audience with me, because I know that they will find gems in it as well, but that's what I'm about, straight innovation.
And that's a good place to be, because ultimately we're all souls, each of us on a journey, but at the same time, we are connected.
Right.
We come from the same source, and the generational differences are part of our wrapping. And it really doesn't totally define us.
No.
And what a insightful and amazing idea to land on as we bring this conversation to a close. Feel free to visit us at Transform with Dr. Cass to catch all our episodes. And this too shall be on the YouTube channel. We cannot wait to have you come back and engage with us on a weekly basis. And most of all, Khalil, thank you so much for making the time today, bringing your A game, your insight, and your soul's journey to this conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as I always remind us, every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. So go out there and engage and transform lives and meet the different souls. And in that process, you'll be surprised that you'll be transforming yourself.